Welcome, everyone. We are going to talk this time about how to build out of the most widely available, really natural exterior wall system. We know that in Maharishi Vastu that we recommend that we build as much as possible out of natural and non-toxic materials. And there is no material which is more natural than wood, solid wood. And building of wood has been a tradition in most parts of the world forever, and it is a tradition which remains lively today. And we're going to have here shortly from one Maharishi Vastu architect who is the real authority in building log or solid wood houses, because he has been the architect for many and even lives in one. And then that is Wojtek Skalska. And Wojtek is, like me, responsible for Maharishi Vastu in many parts of the world. His domain in particular is Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, and Russia. And he has also done a considerable amount of work in Asia, particularly including Nepal. And you've heard from Wojtek before on these webinars, and we're very glad to have him back. And before I introduce Wojtek, I will just mention that we are also going to be hearing from Susanna McCann, and I will introduce Susanna McCann when her moment comes, but I welcome her. And Wojtek also is going to be introducing a person who has built and lives in, I think, 2 Maharishi Vastu log houses, but Wojtek introduces her. And so Wojtek, right now, take it away, and I'll show your first slide as soon as you ask for it.
Good evening and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this very interesting conference. The log house subject is, of course, very close to my heart. In Finland, traditionally for 1,000 years, houses were built with logs only, because this country was a big forest. And similarly with Sweden and Norway, I guess, and Canada. That's why this tradition has been there. But let's see the first slide of the first log house that was built in Netherlands, in Meru, in 1997. And it was built as a headquarters of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and his organization. And what is special about log houses, we were pondering the idea why logs were chosen for Vastu architecture. And the special unique feature or quality, if we can go back to the first, yes, the special quality, unique quality of solid wood is that, as compared to other natural materials, is that this has been a living organism. That means it contains in its structure more intelligence of nature as compared to stone or other materials. And it, of course, gives also the feeling of warmth and coziness and coziness. And let's see some examples of log types first. Can we go to this second slide? Yeah. So these are 2 examples of traditional log houses. They were originally done by sculpturing or cutting by hand with axe. And they were either round logs, as on the right side, or flat logs, as shown on the left side. And the other characteristic feature is that the corners were traditionally sticking out, so they were cross corners. And next. And now, about 20, 30 years ago, it was developed first in Finland, the laminated log system, which is very interesting invention. You see on the left side, there is a trunk, and then you cut two pieces out of this trunk, and then you turn inside out those wood profiles, so that the core, which is the strongest and the most dense, are facing outer surface. And most often they are connecting or gluing together, or laminating together, three pieces like this. So there's additional one in the middle to make the wall enough thick, so the wall is protected from cold during winter without any extra insulation. Here you can see in this picture very clearly how laminated log is created and how this principle of inside out is used. And this makes the logs much stronger. The surface is smooth and it doesn't crack. And then when the profile is precise, then it's also sealed well. And in addition, it is sealed, as you see on the right side, with a stripe of some soft material, which closes the gap and makes sure that there is no draft going between logs. Next. And then corner options. Traditional corners were done, as I mentioned earlier, as cross corners with sticking elements out. But nowadays, if you want to build a log house in a city area, then they don't accept it, because this is more for rural areas or for countryside or for forest log cabins with these crossed corners. So they have developed different technologies or systems of connecting the walls in the corner in such a way that the wall or the logs don't stick out. And next. Let's go back. Yes. So this slide shows the newest technologies. I think since 20 years, they started producing with laminated logs. The logs are much more precise, and they developed a system of machines for cutting and forming the logs, and it's a computer-driven system. The most popular one or known one in Europe is Hundegger system or machines from Germany, but I'm sure in the US, in other countries, similar system has been developed since then. So all the profiles and the joints are done precisely by computer-driven system, and also other decorative elements can be produced once you prepare a drawing, a design, and introduce it into computer. Then the machine follows and produces the desired element. And next. And here is a typical log wall in the factory. They are normally produced these days under a roof in factories, protected from weather. And then once they are produced, then they are stuck together just for testing, and then numbered, as you can see. And then they are brought numbered to building site. And normally in 3-4 days, the house, I mean the structure, the main structure with a bearing roof structure is ready. Next. Here we see the way it is painted with so-called lazur paint, which is usually a natural oil paint with white pigment or yellow pigment mixed into it, as one prefers. But the idea is that it gives a very light surface, which doesn't get dark, and it's transparent, so you can see the wood structure or the natural wood surface. And one important information for those who want to build logs, if you don't want that your walls get dark in a few years from sunlight, it's better to choose a spruce or like Christmas tree, not pine. Pine gets darker much faster. Our house is 20 years old, and it is still, the color is very light. Here we can see installations in these laminated log systems. When machines are preparing all the shapes, they drill also channels for cables, so you don't need to have electric cables on the surface of the wall. And here another aspect, there is a picture from our own house. The other important aspect or feature of log houses is that the wall settles and shrinks a little bit. That means the pillars have to be adjusted after a year or two. And that's why on the left side you see it covered, but on the right side you see a detail. You can lift this little sleeve at the bottom, and then you can adjust the bolt so that you make the pillar shorter, because log walls, if they are made of laminated logs, they settle about 1 centimeter per floor. And if they are done by hand, in the old system, then they settle about 2-3 centimeters. That means you have to adjust the structures which don't settle, so that they take or they accommodate to this shrinking or settling tendency of log walls. And this happens mostly during the first 2-3 years. And once the logs are dry and also settled and fitting into each other, then this shrinking is not continuing. Next. Advantages of laminated logs. There are several advantages as compared to traditional logs, and this is that they are not cracking on the surface, and this is because the core is outside, and the core is always stronger. It neutralizes bending tendencies, because every log, if it's just one piece, it has a tendency of bending as it dries. If you have 3 together, glued together, then they neutralize each other tendency. Also neutralizing twisting. It also is more precise. That's why sealing is better. That means there is not much air going through the gaps. Precision of dimension is also one very important aspect or advantage, especially in the Maharishi Vastu, where Vedic measurements should be precisely followed. Then joints are easier to assemble because they are also very precise. And these laminated logs are also more suitable for city areas. And one more thing I should mention, gluing. Somebody brought up a question about ability to breathe in Vastu walls. This glue is not applied evenly like a film, but it is applied in a form of a grid or net. That means there is air going through freely. Next. Here now we'll show a few examples of log houses. This was the first log house, Vastu log house, and first Vastu house built in Finland at the end of 90s by Häkkinen family. It was built as a summer house. And these are not laminated logs, these are round logs which were produced by hand. Next. And then together with Mr. Häkkinen, we have produced, built Veda house for an exhibition, housing exhibition, yearly housing exhibition in Finland. And this was in 1999. And it became a very popular house at this housing exhibition of about 40-50 houses. So we got a lot of publicity and projects coming after that. Next. Here is the entrance. It says Veda Talo, which means Veda house. This was put up, the exhibition, for 1 month, and about 250,000 people visited, which is a lot for Finland, with only 5 million people population. And after that, the house was sold. All the houses at this exhibition were sold and inhabited. Next. And then after the exhibition, we've built a similar house for ourselves, where we live now and from which I'm speaking now. So this is the front garden, and let us see next picture. This is the interior of the main entrance and Brahmastan, the center of the house, and it has an opening above it, as you can see. And this is the house built by Lahtinen family as a summer house, and it was done with traditional logs, not with laminated logs. And this is a house built in Sweden by Lagrossen family, and we have with us today Yvonne Lagrossen, who was instrumental in the design and building process. She took care very nicely about the whole process, and a nice house has been built. Also produced by the same log company in Finland, which has built or produced our exhibition house, which you've seen a moment ago. The company is called Finlameli. But now I will invite Yvonne to tell more about her or their experience with building with logs, why they decided for logs, and how was it to put it together. So welcome again, Yvonne.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Yes. We got inspired from Wojtek to build with these logs, laminated logs. And we had actually no experience of building houses at all. So it was just going with the flow. And we built it, I mean, it was built and came up very sequentially with hired local craftsmen, mostly. Someone who did brick the foundation, and then the log house arrived in a truck, and with the logs and windows and doors. And the craftsmen from the log house Finlamelli, they also put up the logs, the walls. Then we continued hiring local craftsmen. The plumber came, and the carpenter, and put up the ceilings and floors, mostly ourselves actually, and then electrician, and then someone built the outer roof. So we had challenges, but somehow they just dissolved automatically, almost. And we also, it was 17 years ago, and we had kids in our house, and the youngest child was 2 years old. So it was just not so much thinking, just putting it up. And it took 9 months from we found the lot, or what you say, foundation, and then we stepped in the house. Yeah, that was a little about the process about building the house. Yeah.
And how about your experiences now after 17 years of living in a Vastu house?
Yeah, we are still very happy. And yeah, it was really good luck that we managed to do it, and it just went so smooth. So we feel the atmosphere, it's very much built in stillness. We are working from home partly, and it gives focus and strength from that. And as you said, it gives, with these logs, it's the kind of warm atmosphere. It's like the logs are hugging you. You feel somehow protected when you're in your house. And you don't want to leave, but somehow you need to go out.
Yes.
Also, yeah.
Can we see more slides? John, can you show more slides of this house? This is one, and then here is another one in front. Oh, yes, here is another one. As you can see, in Scandinavia, the tradition is to have nice white framing around doors and windows and around corners. This is a house, also a log house, of course, and also with Finnish logs, but built in Norway, also in it was beginning of 2000, so quite a long time ago. And here the situation was, and it is one option, that the logs, laminated logs, came from Finland, but they were shaped, cut, and so on in local wood company, and the house was put together by local builders. And next, this was the first project, a log house project in Finland, built in 2002. Yes, about 20 years ago, by Mihalowski family. So they're really pioneers of log houses, and they're promoting it and inspiring other people to do the same. And this has been built just outside of Warsaw with traditional logs. And here we were using the same design, the same plans as for the Veda house, for the exhibition house in Finland. And next, this is laminated log from a Finnish company built in Russia by Ulansky family, just outside of Moscow. This was built about 10, 15 years ago. And two projects or two examples, beautiful examples from US, from Vedic City. Doug Greenfield's family was the first to build a log house in US, and it was done in a very nice decorative way, as you can see, and designed by Carmen Quinton. And this is a commercial building in Fairfield, if I remember correctly, or Vedic City. John can say.
Yes, it's in Fairfield, Wojtek.
Yes. And is it an office or what is it?
Yes, it was
an office.
It was an office building.
Yes.
The company kind of retired after a while,
Yes.
but it is still being used for offices.
Yes, yes. Yes, I took these pictures, but it was so long time ago, didn't remember what's happening there. Anyway, quite elegantly done. And I think also designed by Carmen Quinton.
I did the concept design, and then
Oh, you did?
they worked with a firm in Cedar Rapids that specializes in office buildings to carry it out.
Okay, good. So next examples, do we still have more? Yes, these are just options how log houses are built. And the one in a traditional design, you have two examples at the top, and at the bottom left, there is an example from Russia, but built by Honka, well-known Finnish log company. And it's just an example, this is not a Vastu house, to show that modern architecture can be also built with logs. And on the right side at the bottom, it shows that in some cases, the second floor, when there is 1.5 floor, the second floor is done with light timber structure, and only the ground floor is made with log frames, and that way the costs of the construction is reduced. So to summarize about advantages of log houses or log walls, there is a trend these days for intelligent houses, to create intelligent houses, and this normally means that there is a lot of electronics and steel structure and devices and electricity and so on, which control the functioning of the house. But in Maharishi Vastu, intelligent house means more intelligence of nature present in the house. That means intelligence in the structure of solid wood, which I mentioned at the beginning. Then another advantage of log walls is warm, cozy, and secure feeling. Breathing walls, it's an important factor. And then personal style, because log houses are not that popular, so it has a special feeling in it. The structure is solid and very stable. And if you think of earthquakes in some countries, log house will be earthquake resistant, because the frame itself can be shaken but not destroyed. Other structures are suffering from earthquakes. And the passive walls which store heat. So these are the advantages. Disadvantage, you can say, or drawbacks are that it's more expensive, of course. And the other is that you have to deal with the shrinking or settling of the walls, so that the wall after a couple of years is 2-3 centimeters lower. So it needs some adjustments. You need to leave some gaps above windows and doors because they don't shrink, so that the settling can happen. So yes, and this is the last slide from my side. The power of Vastu is coming from connecting with cosmic order and cosmic intelligence. And sometimes in the Brahmastan, in the floor, we create a compass to show how the building is connected with cosmic order, with the rotation of the earth, and precisely with cardinal directions. Thank you.
Thank you, Wojtek. That was terrific. And I think before I introduce Susanna, who will talk about a very, very closely related subject, but an option that is available in the US, 2 questions came in, and I wonder whether you might take very quick cracks at answering them. The first one is, how long can one expect a log house to last? And I have to mention that 5 miles away from where I am sitting is a log house that is almost 200 years old. So there's a partial answer. Wojtek, what is your answer?
Yes, it's hundreds of years. We have many examples in Finland of houses which are 200, 300, 400 years old.
And there is a question about what is the degree of fire resistance in log houses? It would seem as though if a house is made of wood, of solid wood, that it would be very flammable, but that is not at all the case. That's actually, the answer is completely different. Why don't you tell us, Wojtek, how?
Yes, especially with laminated logs, which have very smooth surface, the fire doesn't catch it. So you don't need to protect it in any special way.
In the United States, the building code categorizes different categories of wall construction materials according to how vulnerable they are to flame. And a solid wood wall is considered much less vulnerable than conventional American house construction. The next question for Wojtek is, would straw as a building material also have more intelligence of nature than bricks and stone?
Naturally, of course, it's logical, but you don't use it for, well, sometimes it is used also for walls, yeah.
There are a couple of systems. A system invented in the United States, in Nebraska in the 1870s, is to stack up bales of straw and then clad them on both sides. This has to be done, and it can be extremely durable, but it has to be done with enormous care to ensure that neither mice nor mold get into it. So we don't usually do it, but it has been done in Vastu. And then there is also mixing straw as insulation into mud or clay as an infill inside of a wall. This is an ancient technology that Wojtek is probably very familiar with in Europe, which also can be done and has been done in Vastu. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, I remember I took a course of ecological construction or ecological architecture some 20 years ago, and we visited a place where young people were building houses with straw bales covered with clay. And it happened that on that summer there was a lot of rain, and the walls were wet, and they started growing. So they had a problem with a straw on the facades, and I don't know how it ended, but sometimes it's very risky. But still, it's good to have straw in some way in the building because it's a natural, intelligent material, but it has to be kept dry.
Yes, these two systems entailing straw if used absolutely properly, can have good results. The final question that has come in for Wojtek before I introduce Susanna is to ask whether it is as appropriate to build of log or solid wood in hot countries as in cold countries.
Yes, but in those countries, probably there is not so much wood available. It has to be imported because in hot countries, you don't have pine or spruce. The other challenge are termites or termites. You have to make sure that you can protect the house from that.
Actually, John, I'd like ask Wojtek a couple questions that pertain to what he just said. First of all, is there a typical log thickness, that the laminated logs are in Scandinavia and Russia and the colder climates?
Yes. It depends. There are several thicknesses, of course, and it depends on the climatic conditions and how much frost is there. In the northern part of Finland or Scandinavia, you need, of course, much thicker walls, and they would be maybe 27 up to 30
And
centimeters.
that would be 10 to 12 inches.
Yes, and for inner walls, it's usually about 6 inches. And Maharishi's house in Holland was built with 17 centimeters, which means 7 inches outer walls, and inner walls was it 12 centimeters, which means 5 inches.
Okay.
But the climate is more moderate.
Now, you also just brought up this idea of, insect damage or infestation. And I have noticed in looking at some of the websites that that we have found on log construction, that they talk about treating the logs with some kind of a boric solution.
Yes, yes.
And is that fairly typical?
Borax has been, yes, borax has been used also for fire protection, and it's a natural kind of salt. I don't know exactly, but it's a natural substance. So, but in those countries where the problem of termites exists, they know how to protect it better than we do.
Okay, and also, I think in the US at least, there's a good deal of cedar that is used because fir and spruce are not nearly so common. Cedar is, other than pine, cedar seems to be the next most available and used for log construction. Do you know, in terms of its hardness and sturdiness, is it close to
I think
spruce?
it's harder. I don't know cedar myself, but what I understood or heard, it's quite hard, strong. So it's good.
Good. Okay.
The only thing is that the trunks have to be straight, with the and long.
Yes, and cedar doesn't often always grow that way. That's absolutely true.
Well, Wojtek, thank you very much. As always, a masterful and enjoyable presentation. We look forward to having you back many more times, and we look forward to seeing photographs of the many more buildings across Europe and Asia that you build in the coming years. Thank you so much, Wojtek.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now I would like Susanna McCann. Probably most of you, or even all of you who are participating, know Susanna because she has consulted on more Maharishi Vastu houses than certainly anyone in North America and virtually anyone in the world. She's enormously experienced, and she has had a specialty in designing very small houses moderately small and even tiny houses. And she's had a great interest also as a Maharishi Vastu designer in wood as a natural material. And she has found a terrific solution in the United States to build Maharishi Vastu and to build it as a very small house and to build it out of wood, out of solid wood. And so Susanna, please tell us, and I will pull up your slides so that they're ready whenever you want the first slide.
Okay. Well, as John mentioned, I was enjoying small house design. It's a good way to develop design skills because it's a little bit more challenging when you have to fit things into small spaces without making it feel cramped. So I found out about a type of recreational vehicle. This would be an easy way to get houses built. There's a type of recreational vehicle called a park model home. So John, if you could show the first slide. This type of housing is built according to RV or recreational vehicle codes. And it's built on a steel chassis so that it can go down the highway. And it's intended to be parked in an RV park. And there's a limit of 400 square feet of floor space on the main level. So it's very constrained, very specific. And you can definitely transport it, but it's not the kind of thing where it's not a travel trailer. It's harder to transport. You need a big truck. And so it's not a travel trailer. And it so happened that I found a log house company in Missouri, which is about a 3 or 4 hour drive south of Fairfield and Maharishi Vedic City. So John, the next slide. This log house company, next one, is called Gastineau Log Homes. They make log house kits that people can use for ordinarily larger houses, but they also make this park model home out of solid logs. They're the only company, as far as I know, that does that. And another special thing about their particular logs is that in this area of Missouri, oak as a wood is extremely common and sustainably grown there, very easy to grow in Missouri, very common. And so this company, their specialty is oak log homes. And so the oak is a hardwood. Most log houses are built out of softwoods, such as pine, spruce, cedar. This oak is harder, it's heavier. In fact, when you transport these park model homes down the highway, they have like 12 to 18 airplane wheels because they're so heavy, and that's the only thing the engineers figured out. That's how you can get these down the highway. So I thought, this is great. I'm gonna see what I can do, see if I can come up with a Maharishi Vastu version of a park model home. So I set to work on this and I came up with one. Oh, yes, I love those little dovetail joint corner details that they have on these park model homes. So the next slide shows the east elevation of the design I came up with. One thing I did was I created these box bay windows. John, maybe you can show those. One on the south end of the house that you'll see is in the bedroom, and one on the north end of the house. And this breaks up the flat trailer-like look and also really helps the interior design of the house. So the next slide shows the floor plan. And we can take a little tour of this little park model house. We're going into the east door. And then we turn left and you'll see the little kitchenette in that hall there with a sink looking out the window. It has a little stove, sink, and refrigerator with cabinets above the stove and refrigerator. And also, just on the other side of the door, I used this closet space. Well, on the other side of the hall, yeah, there you go. The closet space to make sort of like a floor to ceiling pantry. And you use pull-out drawers in there or pull-out shelves. And you can store huge amounts of dishes and food and stuff in that pantry. Then we go over to the bathroom on the west side of the house. And there, it's a small bathroom, but it works. The tub I have in there is a Kohler tub that's only 4 feet long, and you can have a tub shower. It's a really nice, unusually deep tub that you can use as a soaking tub, like a Japanese soaking tub. Then we'll go all the way to the south end of the hall, the bedroom on the south. And you'll see how by having the box bay window projecting to the east, it makes the floor space work a lot better in the bedroom. You can walk around the bed and you can have a real closet with shelves inside and pretty good hanging space for such a small house. And so you get good storage there. Then that bed, I think is a full-sized, maybe a queen-sized bed. And we would have built-in drawers underneath because you really need to get as much storage space as you can, anywhere you possibly can. So we'll now go down toward the other end of the building. And you'll notice in the middle of the house, we have the Brahmastan. You could put one of those wonderful compass inlays into the floor in this house, the way Wojtek talked about in the grander houses that he designed and had built. Also, there's a ladder up to a loft. I have it designed so that there's a loft over the south end of the house. And then the north end of the house that has the dining area. You can see a little dining area, the table there. And then the couch and the desk area there is built into the other box bay window. So the desk doesn't project out into the room as much. It leaves the living room more spacious so that you could even open the couch there for a secondary bed. I have a little built-in, a little washer dryer built in under a countertop there, where the washer and dryer is all in one unit. And then you could have a little flat screen TV against that wall. So you have everything you really need in the little house. So let's show the next slide. We can see how the vertical part of it works. What we have is you can see the dashed lines represent the loft. That's the ceiling over the south end of the house. That ceiling's a little over 7 feet high, but then you don't have full loft height. It's just high enough basically for a sleeping loft or storage. I also created a little dormer on the east side of the house so that somebody could put a little sleeping mat or a little mattress in there and have east light and a little bit more headroom in a sleeping loft there. And you can see how the box bay windows are above the floor. And so therefore they don't count for the 400 square foot maximum. They provide extra space functionally without blowing the 400 square foot limit. Okay, next slide. Here are some interior views. We have the advantage of all the warm feeling of wood inside the house. These are solid oak floors. On the left, we have sort of a ship's ladder going up to the attic. That's what I had in my design. On the right, someone would prefer to give up some floor space and have more of a conventional staircase going up to the loft. That's another option. Next slide. And this is just another interior view, looking through the house. And then when you get to the open area in the living area, the ceiling is higher. And they have a built-in fireplace. You can do a very small wood stove, something like that if you like, in this house. Okay, next slide. And here are some things that people have done with the exterior, ways to expand the space in the house. You can add on porches. On the left, you see how someone has added a porch along the entire length of the house. For us, with the Maharishi Vastu house, this would be along the east side of the house. So that's one option. That would have to be added on site after the house is delivered, because it would widen the building so much that it could no longer go down the highway easily. On the right example, we have an example of a porch added on to the end of the house. And this can be done in the factory, because it doesn't interfere with the house going down the highway. All you do is just lengthen the steel beams, the chassis that the house is built on, and you can have porches on the ends. Also, the porches, because they're open, they don't count in the 400 square foot minimum. Now, I was not particularly fond of how the porches added to the end just exaggerated this sort of trailer-like look to the building. And fortunately, in Maharishi Vastu design, John, you could show the next slide, we indent our porches and our wings. And so just indenting the porches a little bit articulates the house more and gives more definition to different areas. And so it breaks up again that long, thin look to the house. I made these porches about 9 feet long, but there are some options for even longer porches. Once you have it at your site, then you're perfectly free as the owner of it. You could finish the thing off. So for example, you could have a whole bunch of windows on the south and make a sunroom. You could screen the north end of it the way the homeowner in the previous slide had screened their porch. So there's flexibility that you have, especially once it arrives at your site. And so I think that's pretty much the end of my presentation. John and Susan have put together this list of log home companies serving the US and Canada, and they've put it on the fortunecreatingbuildings.org website. And so at the very beginning of the list, we have Gastineau Log Homes, and we also have Dow and Duggan. These two companies have worked a fair amount with Maharishi Vastu. Gastineau has it's a woman-owned company. I actually went down to Gastineau and met with the owner, spent quite a bit of time. The engineer for the company worked out how to do my Maharishi Vastu park model version. And they're familiar with this. They're perfectly glad to work with Maharishi Vastu. Dow and Duggan has also done several Maharishi Vastu houses. And the others certainly could. We haven't worked so directly with them yet, but they're worth exploring, especially if they're pretty close to where you live.
Susanna, I should just say that this particular list, no one has to start copying it furiously. As Susanna said, please keep in mind that we have only worked actually with 2 of these. We have had conversations with a couple of the others, but this is not in any way from our side an endorsement of these others. So they're just there because they look promising in terms of what they did and the range of their designs in terms of size, and also probably in terms of their sustainability ethos in the companies.
Good. And another thing to look out for when you're exploring all this is that the logs need to be either laminated or dried, ideally. Some companies use fairly fresh logs, and then the shrinkage problems and the twisting that Wojtek was referring to, and splitting and all that kind of thing, those problems are much more common with logs that are not kiln dried. And so one thing about Gastineau is they're very ecologically conscious, and they've developed a way to do kiln drying using solar energy. So they put it under glass or in some way and exhaust the damp air. They somehow worked out a technology where they don't burn any fossil fuels when they kiln dry their logs. Then after they're dry, then they cut them. And so that really minimizes the shrinkage. Also because oak is harder to begin with. But you want to look out for the dried, to make sure you get dry logs or laminated logs, which I think are also dried before they laminate them.
Actually, Susanna, I was remembering that, and you know this well because you worked on it, that there is actually a log house that's been recently built in Australia. So we have them in all kinds of climates, and they work in these climates because the manufacturers have learned how to make them compatible with all these different climates.
Yes.
John, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I think Susanna's given a terrific presentation on the advantages and opportunities of park model homes in the United States. I have nothing to add to that, but Susan, you did prepare a few more slides of log Maharishi Vastu homes. So we can look at those, and if any other questions come in, then we'll be able to go ahead and answer them.
Yes, I thought it would be nice for people to see the Vastu log homes that have already been built. And these are examples from the US. It's not exhaustive. I didn't get through all of them, but we've got a good number here, and it's a wide range of size and style.
And this is in addition to several in the United States that Wojtek showed. For instance, a house that was originally built for Doug and Francie Greenfield, we saw, and designed by Carmen, we saw a couple of beautiful slides of. But here is one in Fairfield.
I wanted to also say this is a very unique house in the sense that it is planed on both the logs are planed on both the inside and the outside. I don't know, maybe they are laminated, but I had heard that they were actually planed, hand planed for these people.
And here is that lovely 3-sided glazed dining porch that I told you about.
Right. For the house that we just saw the exterior picture of.
And this is a 3-wing house, possibly the first log house built in Fairfield. And it's really lovely inside. And I remember it has cashmere carpeting in it. It's very nice to walk barefoot in it. We don't encourage wall-to-wall carpeting, but if it's cashmere, it's pretty nice. Susan, anything to say about this? I'm not sure which one it is.
It's the Drasnan's house, and I didn't, their original house, and I didn't know if it was log, except I did a close-up at the picture, and it's definitely, you know, the logs fitted at the end.
Terrific.
And this one was one of 3 built by a gentleman. John will remember because he's very fond of talking about his experiences of living in log, where he built this house originally, and then someone was so keen to buy it that he moved out and sold it to them. And then his experiences, especially his sleep and his, you know, kind of his daily routine, went downhill, that he decided he'd had to build another one. He ended up doing that 2 times, but now he's been in his log house, his own log house, for, you know, for many, many years now.
Do you have anything to share with us about this house?
No, except it was one of the first faculty houses built around campus. And it's been, you know, it's probably close to 20 years old. This was a Dow and Duggan house. That much I do know.
And this is a house I designed, which is located on B Street in Fairfield. It has a central courtyard. And in fact, I am designing a slightly modified version of it for a couple in Nevada right now. Even though in this street view, we cannot see the courtyard. But the first time it was built of solid wood. And this is a very special house. It's not all log. In this view, we're seeing post and beam and shingles, but there is a lot of log construction in it. And it's in the Rocky Mountains in a really gorgeous locale. And it's stunning inside and out.
Actually, I think there's some questions for Susanna.
Here's a good question. It is whether there's been any research published on the advantage of in terms of reducing EMR, electromagnetic radiation. I know there's been good research on earth walls, very rigorous research. I would think a thick wood wall would reduce radiation, but I haven't seen research. Susanna or Wojtek?
I haven't seen research, but I have some personal experience with it. When I was looking for a lot to build my own Maharishi Vastu home, I was considering an area that was heavily wooded because I love being among trees. But it had a cell phone tower and long distance transmitter of various radiations. And so I wanted to go out there and test the radiation in the area to see if this particular site I was considering had much radiation. So I was standing, you know, somewhat near the tower, and I got a reading of something like 20 on this radiation meter. And I said, okay, that's interesting. I went into the wooded area where I was planning to actually consider building the house, and it was like 3. It was cut down from 20 to 3 on this scale, just because I was among trees. And I can't help but think it was the trees, it was stepping out onto the road versus being in the trees. I can't help but think that the trees would be very protective, and a solid wood log would be very protective. So that was my experience. Wojtek may have more scientific.
No, I don't think there is any research on that, but it's logical to expect that thick, solid walls will protect better than light timber structure.
Mhm.
Here's a question. How do you get the park model Vastu home off of the frame, or do you leave the frame under the house permanently?
Well, you leave the frame under the house permanently. You can you can sort of disengage the tires to preserve them. And what you do is it's set on blocks, and you would build skirting material around it. And I've designed some skirting details that have a Maharishi Vastu plinth profile on them. You can, my elevation drawing, you can see that, but that's what you would do. You'd leave the frame on and still supporting it, but you would build skirting material around it to hide the wheels and all that kind of stuff.
A next question I think I'll go ahead and answer. It is, are you aware of the Forestry Stewardship Council Certification of Sustainability of Harvested Wood? The acronym is FSC. I am personally, and it's a very, very good thing. Its certification means that in general terms, when a tree is cut down, a new tree is planted. And there are some other precautions taken in the interest of maintaining the environmental qualities of the forest. There is another organization that also certifies, which is called the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. This one is less rigorous, and if how green your wood is important to you, absolutely the first choice would be to see if you can get wood that has FSC certification. Thank you for that question, Peter.
May I ask one little thing about that, which is very interesting, about the quality of wood for logs or for construction. In construction, you've probably heard about the term or concept of moon wood, which means that you follow the phases of moon when you cut the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And when the moon is how you call it, wading, when there is waxing, then the sap, the juice in the trunk is going down or is less, and then this is a good time to cut the tree, because then you don't need to dry it so much. And some ecological builders follow this principle. In most cases they don't, because it's a bit complicated, and log construction, when I asked about it, log companies were saying, we've heard of it, but it's impossible to follow when those who deliver trunks to us, when they cut and they don't want to wait and so on. But interestingly enough, in the ancient text on architecture from Palladio and before, they mention this important aspect of wood. If you want to have wood that is strong and preserves well, then you should follow the phases of moon when you cut them.
Interesting.
Next question. Are there options for larger floor plans, for instance, 600 to 750 square feet on the first floor? These would not be park models. And the answer is yes. Both Wojtek and Susanna have designed many log homes. Susanna in particular has made a specialty designing quite small ones. And in many cases, designs in our Maharishi Vastu portfolios, both the international portfolio and the North American portfolio, can be slightly modified to comply with the thicker wall needed for building a log home. Do either of you, Susanna, do you have something to add?
Not really, except that this park model that Gastineau produces is sort of a rare thing. There are other manufactured homes that we would call a single wide that can be built wider. And you could theoretically have a single wide produced and have them take unusual care to use better wood frame construction, natural and non-toxic at least, with some nice siding and natural materials according to conventional construction that would allow you to have sort of a quick Maharishi Vastu home that would not be quite as expensive as the oak logs.
And speaking of expense, we get to our two final questions. One is about expense. Would either of you speak to the cost or the premium for building of solid wood?
I can just say quickly, I'm not very familiar with that difference. I do know that Gastineau's park model log version starts at about $100,000, so it's not cheap. And that's my main knowledge on that. Wojtek knows more, I'm sure.
Yes, of course, it depends on the country and on the cost of other work and other element of the house. But just to give an idea, if the log frame would cost twice as much as light timber frame, we have to remember that the log wall cost is only maybe 1/3 of the whole cost of the house. So in proportion, the difference on the cost of the walls is much, much less in proportion to the whole cost of the building.
And actually, I think now that at least in the United States and North America, building typical conventional construction materials has gone up and made the cost of logs, which has not gone up so much, much more, much closer together in terms of overall costs. Wouldn't you agree, John?
Yes.
Yes, I hear also in Europe, in Finland and other countries, the cost of construction materials went up very much.
So the sooner you do this, the better. That's the moral of that story.
Good idea, Susanna. John, would you like to just show those last slides of some of the houses that have been built in the United States according to log? We don't have to make any comments.
And while I will also clarify, Wojtek, for whom English is, I don't know, third or fourth or fifth native language, wasn't sure whether the right time to harvest a tree according to the ancient guidelines is during the waxing or waning moon, and the ancient guideline is during the waning moon.
Yes, yes, when the moon is decreasing.
Oh, there's a couple of questions. Someone asks, any guidance or starting point with selecting a plot of land, hopefully for a log home?
Susanna, how about answering that?
Yes, it's good that you asked this. It's important that you start consulting with Maharishi Vastu, ideally before you have your land, if possible. And well, there are a number of considerations. We look into making sure there are no noxious influences in the environment, no really close by sources of radiation that might create some kind of electronic pollution. It's ideal to have a land that's say gently sloping to the east, north, or northeast. And to have maybe some view to the east if possible in urban situations that may not be feasible. But it's a good way to start is to start looking for land, and our initial consultation is for a site evaluation.
I was also going to say, Susanna, that is a very good summary of what goes on in a site evaluation. The reason that we encourage people to look, but not to buy until the site has been evaluated, just so that they end up getting, the full benefit of all of the aspects that are so important in situating a house on a piece of land in Maharishi Vastu.
Right.
And we also have tools. We have a general, some general points that people can use and that they can give to a real estate agent and to be looking for when they're, presenting sites to you as possibilities. We also have tools to help you locate builders. So that's once you get beyond that stage, because a lot of people are trying to figure out budgets and all of that kind of thing. So a builder is an important first step in starting home construction. Okay, some more questions. Should we select one site for a consultation or more than one? The answer to that is you can select as many sites as you want. It's probably good to narrow it down, and do the site evaluations, which can be done independent of actually starting the consultation.
Susan has more detailed information for site evaluations in the United States, how to get signed up for that.
And if you're listening from outside of North America and you contact us at maharishivastu.org, we'll send your email right on to the appropriate one of the international offices so that they can help you.
Yes, that's absolutely true. We are the clearinghouse for sure. So John, do you want to conclude for us tonight?
With pleasure. It's been great hearing from Susanna and from Wojtek and from our homeowner guest in Finland to get of what it's like to build and to live in a Maharishi Vastu house that has exterior walls of the most natural of all materials, trees, and to see that there are ways of doing it that are highly reliable and can be done almost anywhere in the world, certainly anywhere where the weather gets cold. And the people who live in these houses are really happy with them. One thing that we didn't mention is that typically the log walls of a log home are thicker than the walls built when doing conventional, at least in the United States and Canada. And that thickness is solid, it's dense. And so people report that they feel the added solidity and grounding from being in such a massive home. It's really a sweet experience to live in a solid wood or log home. And we hope you've enjoyed this taste tonight. And if this may be right for you, then feel free to reach out to us at maharishivastu.org and to write info@maharishivastu.org. And we'll hold your hand and guide you through the process. And we'll look forward to being there at your move-in to enjoy it with you. But then we'll leave and we'll leave the house to you. It's been lovely having you with us tonight. Thanks again to Susanna and to Wojtek, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar.